Mr. Bert Sorin, thank you for being on the podcast, man. Great to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. So I know a lot of guys that follow Wolf and Iron, follow what you do over at Sorin and your many ventures and adventures over in your life and stuff like that. It's just, you're one of those guys where I feel like we could have probably 5 different types of conversations just because you're involved in a lot of different things. And so I'll keep this pretty loose. And but I wanted to start off by asking one thing. So you're down in Lexington, South Carolina. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So I'm in Charlotte. And so you're about 2 hours south of me.
If that, 80, 90 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to ask, how is the barbecue down there?
Well, so South Carolina barbecue is good down here. It's the mustard based more than are y'all more ketchup based or vinegar?
No, we're the vinegar. We're the kind of
vinegar belt. Yeah. So there's like the mustard vinegar because like probably within 100 miles, it's like the mustard vinegar and the ketchup. I prefer vinegar personally.
You can kind of get a little bit of everything if you just follow that corridor there.
Right. And now then if you go, your Memphis and all that other Kansas City, the sauces change a good bit. I mean, of course it's ketchup based, but I'm kind of a dry rub guy, briskets and all the whole deal, but we could get into all that deep.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I just wanted to know because I always like to know where that little line is for barbecue styles and stuff like that.
It's mustard here, but I'll be honest, I had some barbecue the other day. It's what I was brought up on is mustard, and it was like, I'm not really digging it as much as I used to. So I'm going to have to go to the vinegar.
You got to come up to North Carolina. That's right. All right, man. Well, look, let's jump into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of what you do for the guys that don't know you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Bert Sorin. I'm president and co-owner of Sorin Exercise Equipment. So my father and I, my dad, Richard, started Sorin in 1980 out of our carport at our house. And he was a PE teacher that always loved weightlifting since he was 10 years old or less. And always had an affinity for it and had an affinity for designing and building things. That was what he was always into. So he left the teaching profession after about 8 years, just kind of saw the way that a lot of the politics and everything were going on it. And so he wanted to chase his dream of building weightlifting equipment. And kind of a strange thing in 1980, there wasn't a lot of that around there, but he believed that he could do it better than the current companies out there, or at least he could add something to the table. And it was never a big idea for a big booming business. We loved the strength game, and he wanted basically to add to it. And so that's what I grew up around. It was always the outdoors and strength and conditioning stuff. So that was what I was brought up on. And 23 years ago, I signed on full time. I'd worked there when I was a kid and things like that, but I graduated college and I told Dad I wanted to come and help him. And he said, all right, you can start whenever you want, but you got 2 weeks. You got 2 weeks to decide. So it was like, well, okay, so see you January 1st. So that's when I clocked in 1999 and hadn't clocked out since. So that's what we do there. And what we do at Sorin is we build innovative training solutions, which for us is weightlifting equipment, but that also goes into some programming and some things like that. But what people know us for is like a higher end, customized kind of industry leading weightlifting equipment brand that you might see at a number of NFL teams, elite military organizations, colleges, typical just random people have it at their home as well. It's not that we're only for those big institutions, but some other people decide that they want the best stuff, so they put it at their house.
No, it's awesome. I know whenever I see you guys do like post an installation or something like that online, and it's just a lot of times it's these massive gyms or these colleges or something like that, and they've got all the equipment. It's all in their colors and it's all customized, and one of the things that I love about what you guys do is that it's not just like USA made goods the way we used to make it back in the day. And it's still kind of, whatever. It actually looks awesome. Like it looks professional and really well done.
Thank you.
It does. It looks absolutely top of the line.
Thank you. Well, it has to have form and fun. I mean, the function of it has to be the number one thing. It has to keep people safe, work flawlessly for adjustments for different types of body types, but also extremely heavy use, but then also has to have kind of the framework to be able to utilize for innovative exercises. So we want the people who use our gear to be on their, what we call like a strength exploration. So they're learning and pushing the needle further and further. And so we want to build gear that are going to help people do things and create training systems that have never been done before. So you have to look at it differently. But then the second side of that, we also look at it as strength art. And that kind of speaks to what you've said. It has to look cool, and it has to look intentional, and it has to look a certain way that when you walk in there, you get that little extra pep in your step because you're driving a Ferrari. And, there's a little something about that. I have a 6-year-old F-150, and I love it, and it's super functional. And it I'll be honest, it looks pretty cool too. But, there's something about that new car smell when you walk in, and everything's dialed and everything's intentional and everything matches, and there's a reason for everything. And we also realize, especially those large institutions, it's an arms race. So they're fighting for the next big recruit. And so one of our jobs is to not only give them the ammunition to win that fight, to sign the great recruit, but then to make sure they get the most out of that recruit safely, and to make that recruit extremely strong and durable so they can win games. So that's our job.
No, I love that. When did you, let me back up. When you first signed on instead of just kind of working here and there, what did you think your role was going to be? Like, what did you think you were going to add to the
well, it's kind of funny. So I just basically, I figure my dad was 49 at the time. He'd been at it for 20 years, roughly, almost. So, he was, I just was there. I'm here to help Dad. I don't know what that means. I'm here to help Dad. He seems like he's stressed out and has a lot of stuff to do. I love this industry. I love strength. I was in the middle of my, professional track career at the time. And so I was training with a purpose. So training was my life. So it made a lot of sense to go into the family business that was known for innovative training solutions. And with my finger on the pulse at that time, that was something very beneficial for me, because Sorin opened the doors for me, and my athletics opened the doors for me. But also, I think I was able to bring some things to the table that had not been seen in the industry before, because none of the major players had a 22-year-old professional athlete that was in a strength and conditioning based sport, the hammer throw, I wouldn't say at the helm, because I certainly wasn't, but I certainly had a seat at the table. So that was something that was not extreme. Well, I don't know any other company that happened to have that combination at that point, with an old bull that had 20, 30, 40 years of experience, and a new guy that the sun, rose and fell on training.
Yeah.
So that was my role initially, was to help Dad. And then I think I just made up my title one day, because, when there's only two of you plus the guys in the shop, it's, it's like, I think I put special operations on my business card. Spec ops. Spec ops. And I remember one day, like a secretary or someone from a university, she was like, well, what's your position? And she said, I see your spec ops. And I was like, I'm like 23 years old. I'm like, yeah, I don't even know. I just did that to make myself laugh. I don't know. I'm here. You need some help or what? And then it was funny, because at one point I just gave myself the title of vice president, considering there was no one else besides Dad. So I figured that, I'll do that. And, but basically I was still just helping Dad. And, but you sit at the table long enough, and you start solving problems, and you work yourself into a more and more valued position, and, do it for a couple of decades, and it works out.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So I kind of talked a little bit about this with you before we joined, but we've got Rustic and Maine that we do as well. So we've got these wedding rings that we create, and we've got a team of about 25 folks here in our Huntersville shop, where my office is now, where I am right now.
Sure.
And we started about 6 years ago. And so I love hearing the stories of other USA made brands that have basically have a couple of generations down the road, like they're kind of, still invested and still seeing it grow, because I think that's just so key, especially with all of the offshore overseas kind of, stuff that's going on. Mm-hmm. We got to have new blood coming into it and willing to take it over and take it to that next step. I think that's just absolutely key, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That was something that, I'll be honest, at the time, I didn't take into account because, 22, 23 years old, there's very few things you take into account at that point. But what I knew was I love strength and conditioning. I was pretty good at improvising and inventing things, pretty good, like as in very little, pretty good. But then I wanted to help my dad. And so those were the reasons. And then that it was made in America, and I'll be honest, wasn't really, really thought about because it was just known. It was just, well, of course it is. I grew up, 15 years old, just getting a driver's license and driving to the shop at 7 a.m. and working with the guys, with the men that were there, that, guys that I grew up around, and Steve and Johnny and like all these dudes like that was the Sorin X family. That's who it was. And so I never thought of it. Made in some other place was something that other companies did. That was big companies. That was stuff I didn't understand. This was just, no, we go down there and make stuff. And so later it became more evident. Obviously, I became more proud of it being made in America. And then, then it became really, as I got older, started understanding global politics, started understanding, I hate to say warfare, and understanding economic wars and understanding ramification of decisions. And, you start looking at history and start understanding a little bit more from a grown-up perspective, the things that are happening. I was very fortunate to realize that what we were doing, I believe, was the right thing for American workers. And then that was able to continue to double down on that.
Yeah. 100%. And, just taking a peek at your guys' website, it really shows that you guys understand that because, most websites you go to, the first thing you see is, here's the products that we sell. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I saw when I went to your website was, here's our story. Here's our company. Here's our team. And I just thought, man, that's awesome because, it just shows that, you put front and center the thing that you really care about and the thing that really, makes you guys stand out, makes you different, and also matters to you, I think.
Well, I appreciate that. And a couple of things to that. It's interesting. We were having a conversation earlier this week or last week. And, there's criticism that comes with a strong position, right? And a strong DNA of who you are. We don't shy away from being American. We don't shy away from, someone says, well, the company just feels very masculine. I go, yeah. It's a strength and conditioning company that's owned by two alpha males. If it feels that way, you're probably not far off. And it's not downing. I'm just not very feminine because I'm a man.
Yeah.
That's just, it is what it is. We're not exclusive to anyone. There's plenty of females that train with us, and there's plenty of them that work with us. And it just happens to be owned by Richard Sorin to start. And then it was owned by me, and we happen to be dudes. And it is just, it's going to like a man's going to walk like a man, a woman's going to walk like a woman. And that's just kind of how it is. And so it's kind of interesting, but this conversation came up, and it was like, and I talked to my team. I was like, well, we do things a certain way at Sorin X. And that is, we're passionate about who we are. We're passionate about what we believe in. It's a patriotic brand. Sometimes that's not always looked highly upon. We're not obscene in any way. I shouldn't say but we're convicted, and we're pretty much going to say what we feel. And I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but it's just kind of is what it is. And I told the guys, I said, well, there's guys, as in girls too, guys and girls. I said, we have three choices. We can do what we've always done and keep our strong brand DNA because this is who we are. And we could do that. Even if everyone doesn't like it, we could do at least very well. We could be accurate and have integrity with that because we don't have to study up for that. Mm-hmm. Number two, we can bend the way of every market, the way it's going now, and getting very PC and very name 50 things. We could do that and probably pick up some initial sales right away because when you stand for nothing or you're vanilla, everyone's going to kind of like you. And then they could decide with their own thoughts what they think you are or are not when you don't take a stand. And I said, or 3, we could quit. I said, well, quitting's out. So now we're down to 2. And then, so now the changing anyway who we are to fit in or to do that I know that's a recipe for failure because I'm not that smart to live a lie. So basically we're just like, well, just keep doing what we're doing, But my long way of putting that is it's difficult and many times to, as they say on the racetrack, run what you brung, we got to be who we are. And I applaud anyone who is who they are, regardless of where they are on any spectrum of any continuum. I don't care. Yep. Just do what you do. But some other companies I've seen have come up, and they might try to mimic what we do, but what they do it first with is the product. Well, yeah, because you could order one of my things and reverse engineer it, or not even my thing, but anyone in any industry, they could go, oh, cool. Mike's doing wooden rings. Oh, cool. Okay, let's get his product selections and then just show the same product, give the same specs, knock off $5, and there's that. And if you're into only the product, maybe that's the right customer base. But all the products that I use, they have to be a good product. They have to fit a need. They have to fulfill their requirement per se. But almost everything I wear, heck, most of the stuff I eat, anything always ties me back to an emotion or a person that I believe in.
Yep.
And so if it's a pair of pants, I wear about 7 or 8 brands of pants, and it's because I generally have some connection to the company or those people, and none of them pay me. It's just, I go, you know what? When I put on these pants, I think of my buddies at so-and-so, or a knife I'm carrying. And I go, you know what? Josh Smith from RKC, I'm MKC, or Neil Kamimura, or some of that. And I go, you know what? I'm cutting up this onion right now, and I'm thinking of my buddy Neil. And then I might text him and go, hey, man, really appreciate you. So I look at physical things like products as an opportunity to support the people that I care about, but also for me to live a little bit of my life intertwined with theirs at all times. That's why the story is so important to us, because that's how we view it. If other people don't view it that way, maybe we're not for them.
Yeah, man, that's so well put. And for the guys who are listening to this or watching this, you just need to recognize that I know a lot of guys have grown up at a time when most of manufacturing has already been offshored. Mm-hmm. A lot of us remember the days when it wasn't like that, but you got to understand that when we did that, like when companies sold out overseas to cheap labor, it's actually worse than just simply cheap labor, but I'll keep it nice. Mm-hmm. Cheap labor. We didn't just simply miss out on creating some products here at home. We missed out on that story. Right. My neighbor made these jeans. My buddy made this knife. My buddy Bert and his team made this, this rack that we're using to work out on, right? We missed that connection. Mm-hmm. And we also missed the inspirational stories like, what you and your father have. That should be like, that should just be part of our American gene pool, part of our blood.
Yes.
That makes us just say, I want to start a business. I want to do that. I want to create. I want to build. I want to have a small team of, that's just, veterans that are working or whoever it is that's working with me. And we're just creating awesome stuff. But when we just think about it as a product decision, we miss that and we lose that. And we lose a lot of things in the trade-off.
It becomes transactional or becomes a stock or a commodity versus a representation of your relationship. And, I talk to a lot of guys and they go, gosh, you have this, this tribe of people. And like, I wish I had my tribe and my people. And then as I'm just thinking about it right now, I go, okay, well, who are you supporting? Because purchasing things within, and that's really what we're doing is by purchasing from companies you believe in, you're just expanding your village. Yeah. These are the people in my village and this village might be thousands of miles across, in different ways, but these are the people that I believe in, and these become my people in my tribe, even the people I've never met before, and maybe they've never met me, or, I go, you know what? I really like this thing because gosh, buddy of mine carried this in battle and he really believed in it. And, when I carry, and that's, I believe that's how really good brands and businesses, but also tribes, because this whole thing is life is a big social experiment. We're not meant to be by ourselves. And you see, especially in the last few years, there's been so much fragmenting of different groups, whether it's literal physically, geographically, or with, lockdowns and then all this other stuff. And I just personally believe so many people need to get back together and realize that there are many commonalities, even when people are seemingly on different ends of the spectrum, on the polling, continuum. But what I've found is that if people try to do that and support one another, it usually kind of pulls the tribe together, and people could create a tribe, and then you don't have the loneliness. I think we have, if you ever read the book, Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
Yeah. I finished that about a month ago. Fantastic.
Wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. But you look at a lot of the tribe atmosphere, Tribe by Sebastian Junger, but you look at that same thing and I go, okay, when I'm doing things on my own only, and I'm not connecting with my people, you feel out on an island. And then I'm talking to one of my good buddies this afternoon on the way home. And so we were sharing some stuff back and forth, and it's like, gosh, it's nice to know that there's other people out there that have gone through these same things. But you have to get there somehow with other men or women or anything. And that's just, I feel very, very strongly about that.
Yeah. 100%. I went out to Utah and met with Mike Glover, Fieldcraft, and I picked up his 91 Volkswagen Vanagon, and cool. To drive it back basically across Colorado and, all that kind of stuff, and back down here, back to Charlotte. I got most of the way, by the way. Got most of the way with it. It was an awesome trip. But anyhow,
Mike is one of those guys. We've been at the same events 2 or 3 times, and we have like all the same friends. And I don't believe he and I have ever like shaken hands and said hello. And if we have, it's been like super fast a couple of years ago. But it's one of those guys. I'm like, really interesting guy, and I'm sure we'll be at the same place tomorrow or something like that. But it's like, gosh, well, how do I keep missing this dude?
Yeah. I just met him briefly. I had him on the podcast, but I just talked to him briefly while we were at his shop. Super genuine guy, by the way. Very open, very, very cool dude. And got a lot going on, kind of like yourself. Anyhow. But I decided, like, look, I've had enough. The vehicle's showing its age. I was talking to some of my friends who were back here in the Charlotte area, and they said, "Do you want us to come get you?" And I was like, 6.5 hours for you to drive here, and then another 6.5 hours back. They said, "Yeah. We'll roll, man. Come on." I said, "All right." So they did. And it was an adventure, dude. It was awesome.
Yes.
But having that tribe, I mean, that's something. How many guys can say, I've got friends that would come drive 6.5 hours across the country in the middle of the day, get up early in the morning, rent the dolly, all that kind of stuff, in order to come rescue your sorry butt,
Yes, that is fantastic. And if you have that, you're a rich man. I don't care what, there's no other there's no other metrics needed.
Nope. So I want to talk a little bit about speaking of tribes. I know you do a Winter Strong and you got a Summer Strong coming up. Tell us a little bit about that event and how, just kind of like why behind it and what it's about.
I'm trying to rig a little bit better of a light here. I don't know if it's just getting dark here. I don't know if that's helpful or not. That helpful?
No, it's good.
A little bit better.
Yep.
It's kind of blinding me a little bit, actually, but
I'm totally getting blinded, by the way, by my lights. So
yeah. Whoosh. Yeah, it's just getting dark and the windows are. So Winter Strong, is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Summer Strong, either one.
Summer Strong, yeah.
What's the kind of idea behind the events and what do you guys do?
Well, so Summer Strong was the first one we ever did. And so we're coming up on our 15th year of Summer Strong. And so that'll be, which is crazy to think about. 15 years is actually a long time. But anyway, so Summer Strong is coming up May 20th and 21st. And so it started as my dad's birthday. And 15 years ago, we were talking, it's like a week out from his birthday. It's like, hey, man, what do you want to do for your birthday? And it's like, let's just open up the gym and invite some people over, see if everyone wants to lift. We'll cook out, maybe grab a keg or something and just have a good time. And I said, okay, cool. We'll do that. So I think I put it out on the internet. I can't remember. It's like kind of like before social media, basically.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it got out, but it's like 38 people from 5 states showed up. I was like, oh, this is cool. But what happened is I saw were professional strongmen and professional power lifters and Olympic lifters and thrower, and I was still throwing at the time. And so all these people from the strength world all got in the same room. And when it's only 38 of you for the entire day, someone's going to start training right away. But what I saw right away was people started, if a guy was doing sandbags, and then a couple of the Olympic lifters go, well, show me that, and then they did that for a while. Then it turned into they were doing snatches. Well, then the sandbag guy and the strongman guy started learning snatches, and then it started rotating around. Guys started box squatting. Well, and I watched this whole thing happen where usually, especially at that time, because you got to think that was right at the start of CrossFit too. So like the intermixing of strength modalities was not a very common thing. If you were a power lifter, you lifted over in some dirty gym doing West Side type stuff.
Yeah.
If you were an Olympic lifter, you lifted like in a dirty gym that only did Olympic lifting stuff. So when I saw this, it's cool. Families started growing where people started just helping each other regardless of their discipline. Well, so that was awesome. Got at the end of the day, this was great. Hey, gosh, we got to do that next year. So then the next year is like, well, man, we ought to do that thing again. Like, what are we going to call it? And my buddy of mine, Jason Riddell, he was like, he said, I saw somewhere, saw something that said summer strong, summer weak, but it was summer FU.
Yeah.
Like, that's really good. And I was like, let me just call it summer strong. Like kind of the joke of it being like, summer strong, like, you guys are strong. Well, summer strong, and so we just kind of tongue in cheeked it. And that was year 2. And then it just grew, which by probably summer strong 7 or 8, I think like 7, 8, I think we had like 600 something people, and we've had to cap it at around that.
Yeah.
So, but what it's become is it's grown significantly. So it's not just guys lifting and teaching anymore. It's a combination, I would say, a TED Talk, a seminar, a competition, convention, group therapy, family reunion. Mm. And so the tribe keeps growing, and it grows every year, and it gets deeper and wider every year. And so it becomes the family reunion. Everyone comes back and meets new people and, learns a ton and feels and all the good stuff. And as we kind of put it, it's our vision of what the strength and conditioning world could be on its best day, the kind of the high water mark of if we do it right, we, not only Sorinex, but we as a community do it right, those 2 days will be the best in that field of what that will be. And then we hopefully try to do more of that all in our own worlds throughout the year. And so that's what Summer Strong is about,
man.
And that's coming up. And
I love it. Hopefully we'll get the podcast out before then.
Yeah. That's great. We have a couple tickets left, so if people are interested, it is well worth it. And you don't have to be only a strength enthusiast. If you're a human and you like extraordinary humans, it's a good spot. Yeah,
no, it seems like an awesome group of guys that show up every year. Let's talk a little bit about your personal life, like as in like the stuff that you do, the hunting and and all the other kind of stuff. I don't want to get super personal. But one of the things that I think draws people not only to you but also to Sorinex, and then both ways there, is just seeing how you do life. And I know you're into bow hunting. Obviously, you got the awesome beard, and you care a lot about your family. Beard. You care a lot about your family and those kinds of things. Tell me a little bit about your personal mission. Just kind of like, how do you think about your approach to life?
Oh, interesting. Well, I think it boils down to, I want to have extraordinary experiences with extraordinary people. Pretty much that's it. And that doesn't necessarily mean famous people. It doesn't necessarily mean extraordinary as in climbing Everest. Both of those might qualify. But the idea of that I want to experience an extraordinary life, because I realize I only have so much time on this earth. So I don't want to waste any day of it. So I want to pack in as many, if this is average and mundane and expected, if this is the line, I want to get as many events in my life and as many seconds of my life above that line. Yeah. That's the goal. Okay. So what I've realized years ago, extraordinary experience, and I've chased it my whole life since I was a little kid. I just always thought that was great. But what I realized was the key to extraordinary experiences is generally a shared experience with someone else. But the key of that is generally that has to be a somewhat extraordinary person. Hmm. Normal, mundane, I hate to say normal because normal isn't bad, but people that don't run after life hard and search generally don't have a propensity for a lot of their life seconds to rise above that line. It's kind of like in here. Some days are good, some days are bad, some days are, I didn't really do anything, I watched TV, and I haven't done anything in a while. Hey, cool, I went to the fair. I'll be honest, I just want much more than that.
Yeah.
So I've tried to orchestrate my life very intentionally to give me as many seconds above the line as possible. And that's with the people I associate with, the family I'm trying to raise. And my family's amazing, but I'm trying to raise my family to want those same things. So then we get to do it together. And I get to have those extraordinary experiences with my kids and my wife. And sometimes it's a lot because I push. But, I wouldn't say it's a fear, but it is a bit of a fear because fear generally brings action. I just realized I'm 45 years old. I lost a lot of people in this past year.
Yeah.
I'm not guaranteed one more second on this earth. And I don't want my last seconds on this earth going, gosh, I really mailed it in the last 5 years. And so for me, it's just be as good as I possibly can to people, be as valuable as I can to people, the ones I love in my family, and enjoy life and never think I left a stone unturned. If I wanted to do something or experience something, or if I knew I could put a little bit more effort to do something that will move the needle, if I'm physically able, always choose yes. And I call it the open door policy. And it's not necessarily my door is always open, which generally it is. But what I learned was in life, the extraordinary things that happened in my life are generally because a door was opened and I chose to go through it. And I started looking around and people would always say, they go, gosh, you get to do all the coolest stuff. And I started thinking, I said, okay, am I just super blessed or lucky? And I think I'm blessed and lucky. But also I realize a lot of times when doors are open and everyone talks about like banging down that door. If you really want something, you got to go bang down the door. True. You do at times. But a lot of times, if you pay attention, the doors are open.
Yeah.
I see life as like walking down a hallway, and there's doors that are opening and closing on either side of the hallway at all times. And the doors you choose to walk in are kind of take you away from other doors. But at some point, if you just stay in the hallway and with your hands in your pockets and walk down the hallway of life down to your death, eventually, you just walk down the hallway. You didn't do any cool stuff. You didn't do fun stuff. So a lot of times, if in my mind, if a door is open, I'll look in there and go, hey, is this something I want to explore? Is this something I want to do? I literally had a friend call me. He goes, hey, go to Alaska with me. I've never been to Alaska. I go, when are you going? He goes, next week. Most people will go, that's crazy. You can't just drop what you're going to do and do it. And I go, do I want to go to Alaska? Absolutely. I want to go to Alaska. I like the person. Absolutely. I like the person I'd be going with. Can I move some stuff around? Oh, it's going to be a giant pain in the butt to do that. Is it doable? Yeah. Is it worth it? Probably. And so I went, but there's all the really good stuff that ever happened in my life was generally on a similar situation. Walking down the hallway of life, a door opened and I walked through it, and I continued to walk through it. And that door opened other doors, and that door opened other doors. So that's why I will tell people, like, just pay attention to the doors that are around you, because a lot of stuff opens up constantly. But I see a lot of people afraid. They don't know they're afraid, but many people are afraid to walk through the door because you don't know what's over there. I mean, that's when the adventure starts. And the adventure, if it's a true adventure, can go up or can go down, But if you're relatively capable, if you're relatively prepared, if you're observant, if you're dynamic thinking, you could usually make a lot of those adventures work out pretty well. And so that's kind of how I view life.
No, I think that's fantastic. And there's a lot of things that I would if I'm a guy listening to this, I'm probably going to rewind this section and listen to that again. Cause
sorry, I don't know where it was.
No. It was really good because there's a part about like, like running after life and just how different you think. And I think as well, compared to a lot of guys out there. And like you said, there's a fear that's attached there. So my question is, when you see that door open, do you go, there's probably 100 boogeymen behind there, or whatever you want to call it, 100 disastrous items, or do you primarily focus on the potential good of it, or do you have a pretty measured approach to it? How do you think you approach that?
Very interesting. When you said the boogeyman behind it, I was like, that's an interesting concept. I just thought of that. I was like, And it's not to say that I don't measure out the pros and cons to things, but a lot of times is when I look in that door, if the pot of gold of the experience that I see is there, I'm going for it. Yeah. And generally, and I'm going to do a quick press check to see how many boogeymen are around, but I'm also going to kind of go into it trying to control the situation where, like, I've decided at that point, like, we're going to figure out how to go to Alaska.
Yeah.
We're like, and it's just in some of those things. And so, yeah, you can't just go willy-nilly at things. I mean, you definitely, you could say, hey, this is it. And then you kind of sit back and you do your pros and cons and you make sure that your I's are crossed, and you make sure the wife is good with you doing this, or that you're not, doing some ridiculous business move that makes zero sense. Although we've done that a number of times and been relatively successful. Actually, it's kind of funny. I used to be a member of a CEO group, and we were in a kind of a tough spot at one point, and everything the whole CEO group told me to do, we did the exact opposite. And we just went zoom. And it's not that we were that smart, but all I'm saying is they didn't have context.
Yeah.
They didn't walk in the shoes. It's very easy for me to sit down with you in your business and say, well, what you should do is I'm not about your business for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me. Maybe there's some interesting mindset stuff, but don't listen to me how to tell you how to handle your money and what to do with your business. If you want for your business to flourish, you beat the wall down for it. You beat a path to it. Figure out where you want to go and you beat a path to it. I can't define that. And so that's where I'll go from my position, my context. Where am I with this? You do a SWOT analysis on it and you go, what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, everything like that. And you go, that's a pretty good deal. And sometimes you just get there and you go, I walked through the door. I looked around for a minute. Maybe it's not for me right now.
Yeah.
But at least you walked through. At least you did the math on it. And at least you did work the process.
And I think it's key. What you're talking about is that a lot of guys who have more of an entrepreneurial and adventurous sort of mindset, maybe we came about it naturally. I don't know how it shows up in us. And I think we would probably just walk through the door, not willy-nilly, but we would probably be less inclined to think about all the potential disastrous negative things that could happen. And we'd be more inclined to think about, is the potential great enough to be worth whatever the risk might be? Right. And a lot of guys are not aware enough of how they even think about these scenarios. When the guy says, hey, you want to go to Alaska? Maybe it's not next week. Maybe it's at the end of the year, right? Or next year. And instead of being aware of how they actually think through these things, what they do is they just naturally say, nah, can't, wouldn't be able to afford it. It's going to be too.
That's for other guys. I never do anything cool like that. Exactly. But that was what I saw was the same guys who were generally saying no were the same guys that we would hang out. They go, man, you just get to do all the cool stuff. See, I don't get to do stuff like that. And I go,
I don't get to. Yeah.
I don't get to. I was like, I've been very blessed, but I've also put myself in a lot of positions for that stuff to happen. And then what you find out is the more doors you walk through, the more times you're in those positions again, because you're kind of like a proven door walker througher guy, and then it's weird. And I call it that's the thin air concept, is the further you go up, and again, not socioeconomic or any of that type of stuff, but the further you go up with extraordinary people that are looking for that life at that extraordinary level. And again, I'm not talking about money. When you start getting way up there, there's less and less of you. There's less competition.
Yeah.
the competition is at the base of everyone leading these like mediocre lives. That's where all the competition is.
Yeah.
But when you get up to the top, it's interesting, like talk like a Mike Glover, the same guys keep kicking up. You kind of go, oh, you're here again. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, so we kind of laugh. I was like, okay, so like this group, as it keeps, and everyone's on their own adventure, but the people who are really running after life, it's a smaller and smaller group. But the cool part is everyone's kind of cool with each other at that point, because everyone realizes like, man, I'm not against you.
Yeah.
You're trying to climb this mountain too.
Well, not only that, but happy to have found somebody else on the journey, like seriously on the journey.
Seriously on the journey. That's what we call it breathing the thin air. That's what we call it. The thin air is hard to breathe, but when you're up there, the competition is very low, and you get to celebrate with the other people that are courageous enough to breathe the thin air. They could handle it, because it ain't easy. I mean, that there's the other side of it. That's your average sleep goes down, and your stress goes up. And a friend of mine actually told me it's pretty interesting. He's a CEO for a multi-million-dollar business, blah, 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 all the other stuff. And he told me, he goes, Bert, he goes, how do you put it? He goes, men like us trade a long, boring life for a shorter, exciting one. Mm. And I went, huh. And he goes, the stress and everything and all that, the wear and tear, he goes, just mathematically, it's kind of how it is. He's like, which one do you want?
Yep.
It was just like, okay. So then my goal became immediately, die as a young man as old as possible. It's just like, how do I have a very extraordinary, awesome life, but then do my homework on the back end, whether it's, exercising and eating good and taking care of myself and trying to do things I love to do, reduce stress, increase, dopamine, and increase, oxytocin and all this other stuff, so I could live great for as long as possible. Like, that's become the goal. Like, how do I party on this planet as long as possible? Yeah.
There's I don't know if it was Roosevelt, it may have been Theodore Roosevelt. I'm a big fan of his, so it wouldn't surprise me, but he said, I think it's better to wear out than to rust out. And 100%. He definitely wore out. His engine burned hot for so long, he eventually, killed over at about 60 years old, I think. So,
boy, but that guy went after it.
He did.
I mean, he went after it. And I want to live for a long, 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 long time. But I realized, if it gets cut short, I couldn't think of anything more tragic than, I saw my granddad do this. He went after it relatively hard early on, but once he retired, he was always talking about like, when I retire, I'm going to go fishing all the time. When I retire, this and that. He retired in probably the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And when he passed in 2011, I'd seen him in the same chair 98% of his life.
Wow. Yeah.
I saw him. He'd stand up and walk around the house, for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. I think I remember him going to the beach once with this in the early 80s. But it was like, once he was done working, he was tired, and he sat in a chair for 30 something years.
Gosh.
And it broke my heart thinking, gosh, I remember hearing all these stories about fishing and all this cool stuff he used to do, and go to be just done. I don't understand that. And I just hope that doesn't happen to me. So I try to build my life, the infrastructure to not give me a choice, so I'm just going to have to keep doing it. And then surround myself with a number of knuckleheads that won't let me stop. So.
Well, and I think we can purposefully bring in rest into our lives as well, and restoration. So, I mean, there's one thing to go hard at, a particular goal for a project or for a period of time. But like you said, if we're taking more of a, if we're being smart about it, if we're trying to increase the amount of time of our influence here on this earth, we do have to take time to just like rest, recharge, get away, and learn how to slow down a little bit, because that's good for us.
Absolutely. I know the math on it about as well as anyone, but that is one of my biggest failures, is just, there's just always another adventure. I think Friday I worked, and then I went to a friend of mine who was having her jersey retired, that I went on track and field with. And then I got back late that night. I hung out with the wife, and 11:45 at night, she was like, all right, we got a long day tomorrow. I'm going to bed. And in my mind, I'm like, I should be bed by 10 o'clock, and 11:43, I go, I'm going fishing.
Going fishing.
And I was cleaning fish at 1:30 in the morning.
Golly.
Because I wanted to serve fish to people on Easter. And I was like, well, I better go fish. So I got on my boat and just went hunting fish all night and coolered up and came back. And then I was like, well, I got these fish and I could put them on ice and leave them in the morning. I was like, no, if you're going to do it right. And so I remember sitting on the dock by myself at 1:30 in the morning going, I should have been asleep 4.5 hours ago. This is absurd. But then the next night, my buddy came over and we cooked out for a bunch of people. And about 11 o'clock, he was about to leave. I was like, you want to go out? And he's like, yep. So at 1:30 in the morning, the next morning, we're cleaning fish on the dock again. And then, but for Easter, we were able to serve a lot of people with fish.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, that we built an extraordinary experience. And I got to be with my friend. I got to go do the stuff I want to do, the stuff I wanted to do when I was a 10-year-old boy. And that's another part of the goal is, I hate to say it, like I've wanted to do the same things my whole life. I've wanted to have adventures. I've wanted to have interesting friends, and I've wanted to be physically capable my whole life. And so that just kind of became my goal as a 45-year-old man to go, okay, cool, go do that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys need to work on getting that back, actually, because at some point we give that up for the corporate job or for the whatever. And, I think every guy as a 10-year-old kid's like, I want to be an adventurer. I want to do something exciting with my life.
Who didn't?
Yeah, exactly. And then they eventually sell that out for whatever kind of ease and comfort that comes along with the predictable life.
Right. A buddy of mine sent it to, we had this conversation the other day, and he's a friend of mine that was just, he ran after life, in my opinion, too hard at times. But he's one of those guys that'll be, goes down in legends, like, oh my gosh, And I talked to him the other day, and you could just hear the fatigue, and he's 45 like me, fatigue and tired, and just like, he just kind of was that was a broken, I don't want to say broken, but he was just, he had succumbed to the everything,
Yeah.
And we got talking, he's like, man, it's like, I'm watching what you're doing this. And I was like, dude, what's keeping you from it? Like, seriously, I know the guy I used to live with, and he's just like, so I actually gave him the Comfort Crisis book, and we're kind of going back to this, and I invited him to come out to Summer Strong and some things like that. And he sent me something that said it was, I'm trying to remember, I'll paraphrase, and I'm sure I'll get it wrong, but it said the only two people you need to be worried about impressing is the youngest version of you, of who you wanted to be, someone that would make you proud. If when you were 10 years old and you look at yourself now, would you be proud? And when you're 85 years old and you look back at what you're doing, would you be proud?
Oh, that's good.
I'm like, yeah, okay, that's brilliant. And for the most part, my 10-year-old self is like, good job, dude. And I try to hold that as that's kind of something I try to go through. But then I'm starting to look now, I go, if I make it to 85, that's where the maturity of I think when you're young, the adventure and the push, that's what you're looking for. And then when you're old, it's, did I show maturity? Did I show grace? Did I show, compassion for people? Did I help people? Because at that point, your adventure days are somewhat over. And did you do this stuff for others? And so that's the balance, right? The old man and the young man. Yeah.
No, I think that's fantastic. That's fantastic advice. I want to cut this off here in just a second, but I wanted to share a thought. We've got the Memento Mori thing, right? Remember that you're immortal and that you'll one day die, which is, it's kind of a cool thing. A lot of guys aren't aware that the fact that they're mortal, and so they don't live with that sort of mentality of, I've only got so many years left on this earth to do something significant or something meaningful. Mm-hmm. But then I think some guys get really wrapped up in that as well. And so there's a counter to that I call Memento Aeternum, which means remember that you're immortal, that you'll live for eternity, if you're Christian, at least, I guess.
Yeah.
And the idea there is that, we don't just have that 85-year life here on this earth. There's going to be a lot of things left untried, left untested, a lot of adventures we didn't get a chance to go on. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. We've got a lot of adventures in store for us, and that's a really good thing.
100%. And as a Christian as well, I do believe that. And I believe even from a worldly perspective, it lines up, because what we do here on this, as they say, what you do here on this earth echoes in eternity. So the seeds that you plant while you're here, they're going to be around. Your actions, how you treat someone, or how you set someone else up, or how you inspire someone now, if you do it well, that will live on more than your 85 years or whatever it is. And so that becomes a driving force as well. That's why I had 3 kids. I was an only child. My dad was an only child. I decided to break that and go, no, if I'm going to be a dad and I want to do it right, and I want to be a dad to as many kids as I can handle. And I want to make sure that as many people have or be able to benefit from this. That's still some days I don't know if that was the right choice. I go crazy. I was like, man, kids are so easy. I was like, thank you. But yeah, just kind of, I don't want to ramble, but the part of it of, yes, I realize I will be gone one day, but if I could do some things that maybe make the world a better place, if my kids are better than I was, and I teach them how to teach the next, maybe we could tilt it a little bit.
Yeah.
Tilt it in the right direction.
I hope so. Something worth working for. That's for sure.
It's a worthy task. It is.
Well, Bert, this has been a fantastic conversation. How can people get in touch with you? How can they follow along with what you got going on?
Sure. I'm not really on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook. My Facebook, I don't check a whole lot because it's Facebook. So Instagram is probably the best way. That's Bert Sorin, BertSorin. You could see a lot of stuff we're doing at Sorinex, Sorinex, Sorinex Outdoors, if you're kind of an outdoors enthusiast. And people ask me, what's Sorinex Outdoors versus Sorinex? All of it is human performance related. It's just Sorinex started getting kind of pigeonholed into the the sporting world, or the typical strength and conditioning world of that has the rules and the whole deal. The outdoors is just a little bit more, hey, you still need to be strong, durable, and hard to kill, but maybe you do it on a ski slope or a rock climb or a rock face or a lake or a bow hunt. I just happen to be into bow hunting, but heck, next week I might be into rock climbing. Who knows? And it's just that's a way for us to just keep adventuring. And so a couple of different things like that, and just check us out. We would appreciate any support. And our goal is to, much like my own life, I want to do extraordinary things for as long as possible. The idea of Sorinex is that for it to be sustainable for as long as possible, if we could help people.
That's awesome. Very awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you, and keep pressing on and staying legendary out there.
Hey, thanks a ton, Mike. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.